Welcome. Welcome to our conversation. Today, the conversation is on the role of friends in building a strong family. And as all of you who are familiar with the Strengthening Families Protective Factors know, relationships, positive social connections are a protective factor. So this directly relates to why you would want to have a strong network of friends and how that could not detract from, could actually help strengthen your own family. So I have a little housekeeping to take care of. And Andrew's in the background. Thank you, Andrew, for holding it down on the tech support. It always makes me feel very secure knowing that Andrew's here and has my back. So ways to engage. The primary way to engage you're using, which is the chat. And for these conversations, it's always great to hear people's voices. So if you would like to speak and actually be heard, just raise your hand, and then Andrew will unmute you. You'll unmute yourself, and you'll be able to talk. Whenever we do anything, Be Strong Families has agreements, and this is in recognition that we co-create this safe space together. So we have just some simple agreements. If you can agree to these agreements, do like Christina did and type "I agree" in the chat. That also gets your fingers warmed up for conversation. So let's go. Hey, Steve Bora. Wonderful. All right, let's go. Let's go with our first. These conversations are based on resources we have for living the protective factors. And specifically, the questions or the topics for today come out of the affirmation cards. Which are also in turn related to the book. So there's a small book called Living the Protective Factors, and then the affirmation cards kind of mimic the book, but are in a simpler form, and they're intended to be used as all affirmation cards are, to draw a card for the day, or to say, what do I need for my family? And then draw an affirmation card and see what the thing is to focus on for that day. It's kind of a way to get your subconscious mind involved in keeping your family strong. And then a couple other resources we have. All these are available on our website, but we have a playbook, which is like 7 weeks of activities that build protective factors. And it's a DIY kind of thing. You can do it for yourself with your own family. You could get a group together and go through it together, or it's often been used as the core curriculum for a parenting education course. So without further ado, let's get to our first topic, or our first affirmation card, which is build your A-team. Build your A-team. And then the affirmation is, I spend time with people who make me feel good and help me be my best self. I distance myself from people who tear me down. So I guess the question I would ask is, what does it mean to have an A-team for you? When you think of your life, how does this concept of an A-team, of people who build you up and distancing yourself from people who tear you down, how does that resonate with you? What's difficult about it? What's the challenge there? What's the opportunity? And I'm just going to keep throwing out questions until somebody starts writing in the chat. And there's no wrong answers. There's no wrong observations. It's just, how do you connect with this affirmation? Christina has her hand raised, so we'll unmute Christina. And meanwhile, Maggie says, I have a set of friends who have common values about children and families. We meet for lunch or coffee and we learn from each other. Fabulous, Maggie. Hi, Christina.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. It won't let me have the video on at the same time as the mic, so if that's okay.
Yeah, that's how it is with these.
Okay, so this question, kind of touches how I would feel from when I was younger. I had a group of friends that I, grew up with that were close to me, and, they were kind of like family. But as, growing into an adult and turning into a parent and, taking different paths in my life, gradually, I built a different team, which was more focused on, people that had children, chasing goals, are determined to get to places in their life that I was also. So, and it played a major impact, with people around you that are positive and wanting the same things you want for yourself and your family. You know, it's very important. So it turned into me having a new set of friends that was positive and pushing me to want to push myself to make those changes and go further in my life. So it was a few, that I just had to, basically cut ties with. It's not saying that if I seen them in the street, I wouldn't be like, hey, how you doing? Or anything like that. But as far as, how we used to be when I was growing up, that, it just changes. I think it's the maturity level as well,
Yeah, I resonate with everything you're saying. I'm sure a lot of people on the webinar do too. Is that whole thing that sometimes you start with aren't necessarily the people who go, what do they say that people are there for or a reason, and then and that sometimes you do have to cut ties. So thank you for sharing, Christina. And Margaret, let's see. Steven says, I think it can be difficult to find time. This I think relates to what you were saying, Christina, too. It can be difficult to find time to spend meaningful quality time with some friends, given the busy nature of life. I try to be intentional about plans to bring my A team together. I try not to sit back and wait to be invited to events, but to make events happen. So that issue, and I think this is what Maggie was saying too, about intentionality, that we need to be intentional about and aware of people that are helping us be our best self, people who are helping us move forward, people who we're able to consult with on what's next, as opposed to just kind of like letting it happen. And I think we haven't seen a lot in the chat yet about people who tear you down, but typically in cafes, when we talk about this A team question, the other issue is that sometimes people who are close to you, family members even, or people at work, can be toxic, or can be difficult for you. Maggie says, I have a set of 12 friends from high school, and we remained in touch off and on. And now that we're older, it's amazing how our life paths and pursuits have been similar. That's cool. And Tammy says, by removing toxic people from my life and surrounding myself with those who build me up and help me be my best self, I've really seen a big difference in my mental health. Life is stressful enough without having people bring us down. That's totally true. And Susan says, I find I have friends who I can count on and can help when I'm feeling stressed. Sometimes it's hard to distance from family who are not positive or not kind, but I need to learn that we don't have to internalize or react to those interactions. Nice. So that's the that whole thing of that reminds me, Susan, of a couple of things about reacting versus responding, and also just the 4 agreements where I don't know if people are aware or familiar with the 4 agreements. Are you? One of them is don't take anything personally. And when you read about why you shouldn't take anything personally, it kind of says everybody's living in their own dream. It really resonated with me. And that when you don't have to eat emotional poison, you don't have to let the toxic energy that people are putting off get into your space. You can be like, let it roll off your back. Why? Because if they have anything legitimate to say that would actually be helpful, there's a different way to say it. So when it's offered in an unkind way, or it's said in an angry, mean, derisive way, it's really more about them and where they are. Because if they actually wanted to assist you, they would find a way to be able to talk about the issue without being mean. So it's really about I think that I don't like to talk about toxic people, like some people are toxic and some people aren't. I think we all have the capacity to get into toxic modes, or at least I know I do. So it's like when I'm being mean or when I'm not being my best self, it's really much more to do about me than it is about the people that are in my in my uh in my world. Christina says she's no longer seeing the chat. I don't know what to do about that. Okay.
That's been cleared up.
Okay, there's the 4 agreements. And Dee says, I communicate with people that are mostly grandparents. I stay close with my grandkids and we can share experiences, especially when we find ourselves still testing boundaries with their parents. And then Maggie says, with the 4 agreements, you have to be aware of not just someone's intention, but also your own intentions. Yes, I think that that's actually critical, and actually being more aware of your own intentions. And I think part of building your A team is really has to do with your relationship with yourself, that you have to value yourself enough to make sure that what's in your environment nurtures you as opposed to tears you down. It's about creating boundaries, right? Healthy boundaries, but the positive energy that you need is not necessarily going to come only from outside. It comes from inside. It comes from you nurturing yourself and then having the people in your circle be a reflection of your positive energy. There's a kind of a truth that says energy attracts like energy. So if you're at a vibration that is extremely positive and that is, then you'll be surprised how negative people kind of can just fall away, or people who are at a lower vibration will just kind of like fall away. You're not interesting to them anymore, and they're not interesting to you anymore in a certain way. So very fruitful conversation here. I'm trying to see if I don't think I missed the one, Andrew. I think I read it out loud. But anyway, thank you everybody for sharing on that one. Are we ready to move to the next affirmation? Okay, so remember we're on these relationships and we're on how friends can help you build a strong family. This one is about your children's friends as much as, and as a parent, the way of living the protective factors is to know your children's village. It says it takes a village to raise a child. Well, sometimes our village, that's what we start out with as parents. We start out with our village and bringing our children into it. But as our children get older, they get their own village, and we can be distanced from that if we don't make an effort. So the affirmation is, I know who is in my child's world. I assist my children with navigating their relationships and being a good friend. So what's your experience with this one? I know some of the people on this call are grandparents, and it's maybe a long time ago, but some of you also are working with families, and working with families who have young children. What's your experience with getting to know the people in your child's village and assisting children with navigating their relationships? My son is almost 30, and we still have issues with friends, like friends who do things that are like outrageous and hurtful. And he knows, he's obviously a grown man now, and he knows like what to do. But that foundation of being able to have the discretion of this is what a friend acts like, not just just accepting whatever a person, after you call them friend, like, I guess after you call someone a friend, like this is a friend of mine, then, but are they acting like a friend? Do they have your back? Are they doing the things that friends do? And I have another friend who's making a big move, and she said her best friend is being really negative about it and trying to scare her and doesn't want her to leave. And I'm like, I think you need to reframe whether that person is really your best friend or not. I think you could say, this is my oldest friend and my oldest friend is having trouble with me leaving. But if this is really your best friend, like, is it really your best friend if she's tearing you down and hurting you? And Tiffany says, Tiffany, you got to do it to panelists and attendees because nobody but me can see it. But Tiffany says, it's tricky at times when their friends can do certain things that your kids aren't allowed to do. Yeah, right? And Maggie says, I learned what my children's values were, even if they still made mistakes, by talking with him about his friend's struggles. He felt it easier to do that than to talk about himself. And Christina says, I like to meet all the parents of the children my kids hang out with and do a lot in the house. But luckily for me, my kids have only one close friend, and she's like another daughter. Tammy says, knowing my kids' friends and their families was very important to me. I was more comfortable allowing my children to do things with their friends when I knew their parents and they shared my values. As far as the friends themselves, if they weren't treating my kids right, I would talk to them about how it made them feel and how to navigate the issues. Raquel agrees with Tiffany. And Dee says, it's very important to know your children's friends. Social media can make that very difficult, and you have to use devices and apps to know what's going on with them. I found there to be a lot of bullying and envy dealing with social media. That's a great way to take this conversation, Dee. What's everybody's experience with knowing what's going on in your children's social media world? Maggie said, it's interesting when you're an adult child and you have the same friend, but your relationship is different. My son got upset when I had a conversation about our mutual friend's values that crossed over into my family, and we didn't agree. He was afraid it would affect his friendship with him and didn't want to lose that friendship. All was fine eventually because this mutual friend and I talked as adults in discovery, not criticism. Nice. What are some strategies for monitoring social media, and how do you know what's happening in your children's social media village? I know the social media landscape changes so frequently for kids. Like back in the day, it was Facebook, but now like kids aren't on Facebook, and it's kind of like I would have people who were friends of, people would friend my kids, who were, maybe I wasn't a friend necessarily all the time, but there were people that would let me know, when something was happening that I might want to pay attention to or ask about. What are some strategies for assisting with the social media village? Dee, what devices and apps do you use to know what's going on with them? Do you want to speak, Dee? We can unmute you. Christina says, I agree with Dee. I follow all my kids' social media accounts, and my kids will delete others who post inappropriate things. And Joy says, not really able to monitor social media. I try to talk with my teens about their lives, and they turn in phones at night. Dee says, my daughter handles the app to check usage. She also had GPS on the phone. Yeah, it's nice to be able to find your iPhone. Dee, oh good, Dee. Andrew's unmuting you, so you are permitted to talk.
Yes. Hi, everyone. That's what I was saying, that my daughter, her grandson just turned 16. So, they start young with the different social medias and things like that. So she didn't have a lot of trouble with him so much, but the younger grandchildren was the ones where I found that she was showing me, where responses were being made, where they were bullying and doing certain things like that, not maybe just with her, but with other kids. So it was kind of like, okay, you don't even know a lot of that's going on, how some of the kids kind of pick at you. So my daughter had advised her niece to just come off of the social media because she did do a lot of positive things, and that some of the kids would get jealous and things like that. I'm letting her know that these are strangers. You don't really know them. You should really have conversations more with your family and friends, more so worrying about the comments from the people you don't know from social media.
Yeah. Thank you, Dee. Thank you very much for sharing. And Tammy says, my girls are older, so social media wasn't really an issue for her. Daughter just started when she was a teen to get into Facebook, and the rule was to only friend people she actually knew. She did befriend a few girls, and that's what Dee was saying also about some of these people are strangers, like you don't know them. And some of them could be pretending to be people that they're not, you know? So she did befriend a few girls on a gaming site. Again, I was able to know their parents, and we actually met up with several of them in person. Tiffany says social media is scary. Mine aren't at the social media yet, but I check my kids' history on YouTube so I know what's going on and make sure we're close. And Leah's going to talk in a second. Maggie says when they're under 18, there was not a question about the rules used. It was their tool, not their entertainment. So most important, doesn't stay in their room and charged in an area where all are charged, because when the lights go out and everyone is asleep, it's like parents don't exist. I agree with keeping in touch with your children and values, but it's so difficult when they can access it while at school, etc. It becomes their reality. And she says also in our town, we had a teen suicide when that scam came over his phone, holding it ransom unless he paid them money. Oh man, I'm sorry about that. Teen suicide is another really scary, horrible thing. Tiffany says, I make sure my kids know certain stories that kids trusted a stranger and keep that open space to what really can happen. Yeah, just it's not like scare tactics, but it is like reality check. Like not everybody is who they say they are. Leah, do you want to unmute yourself and Andrew will unmute you? Great.
Hi, yes. I have 3 teenagers and I'm kind of in a gap because I have twins that are 15 and then I have a daughter who's 19. And so it's kind of like the oldest thinks that she's grown and the 15-year-olds we're just kind of right in the middle. But what I wanted to talk about where friendships is concerned is I've made it a point to establish conversation with my children as to what a friend is, what is a friend and what a friend is not. And I've had this conversation from the time that they were very young up until right now. And I've even as an adult had to ask myself that question. And it's important. And so they kind of do a checklist of, and we'll have conversations. And even when we get into best friends, because even the youngest daughter was kind of like, well, she's my best friend and she's my best friend. And she, okay, well, what constitutes a best friend? And you consistently have to, have those conversations with your kids. The other interesting thing is all of these apps and all, I literally just had this conversation with my 19-year-old last night. We kind of got into an argument about, things that I'm having to oversee and things that I'm having to watch. And the comment was thrown, well, you're just trying to control me. And I think as parents, we have a responsibility to come out and say, I am your mom and what I'm doing as your mother is what's in the safety and best interest of you. And that doesn't mean that you're going to like all of my decisions. As your mom, I'm not your friend. I am your mother, and that is my role. But it is also my role to look at who you are surrounding yourself with and for me to guide you. And I also have to step back as a parent sometimes, and I have to let them fly, as difficult as it is for me right now, and know that they're going to fall. Because through all the developmental stages of their life, they were crawling before they walked, and I have to let them get hurt. Not to the extent where, it's traumatic, but even their little small wounds can be traumatic as well. But I have to let them fly a little bit and then kind of reel them back in and set that precedence that while you're in this house, this is what's happening and here's why. So our family discussion last night, I got a location app that I had downloaded, and I'm not technologically savvy, and stated, it's not a control thing. We're all going to share our locations with each other. We're going to do this as a family so that it doesn't just look as a matter of controlling. We're doing this together so that we know where we're at. I have children with medical needs. My family, myself have medical needs. So if something happens at the side of the road, I have access to you. So it's not just about who you're with. It's about just us knowing that you're okay and that we all have access to each other, especially with 3 teenagers that are just going to start driving. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. There are so many things to pull out of the wisdom of what you said. And I thank you for sharing it, Leah. You're getting a lot in the chat. Yes, agree. Yes, yes. I think there's another one of these affirmations. I don't know which way it is, but it's like be the mom, be the parent. And I think that's what I hear you saying also, like, be the parent. Like, you need to be the parent. Parents need to be parents because no one else is going to be the parent. So yes, you're friendly, you're kind, but you are protecting. That's what living the protective factors is about too, right? Your job as a parent is to protect. Partly it's to build those protective factors and get your kids so that they're protected when they move out into the world as adults. So I think there's a lot to what you said, Leah, and I just want to say thank you and aho, absolutely. Google Maps Christina says you can share location through Google Maps on the phone with your family. And then there's also the, find my iPhone. Like if you have a family plan, I mean, with iPhones anyway, like you can see where the different devices are if they're online. So I'm sure that's what the location app is about too. So we have one more and we only have a few minutes left. But this is about, your relationship with your other parent or your child's other parent, or it's about keeping the relationship, sharing parenting. So I treat my child's parents in the way I would like to be treated. I honor their role in my child's life. So I think that is something that that can be easier or harder depending on your relationship. I think we're talking about all kinds of situations like that people have with co-parenting or with sharing parenting. Sometimes people who have kids together are together, and sometimes they're not. And sometimes there's a step parent involved as well. And sometimes they were never married. And sometimes you're in a married situation. And so it's, navigating and negotiating parenting with your spouse. But what's this like for all of you? Treating the other parent or parents in the way you would like to be treated and honoring their role in your child's life. I have noticed also, and I'm a feminist, everybody knows I'm a feminist, but at the same time, I have boys, and I have noticed that women can be really rough in restricting and not respecting and we've had this conversation before, and men can be rough too. But it can be really rough when there's gatekeeping going on and one parent can't get to their children because the other parent is making the bar too high and it's all about them. It's about, I want you to love me, or I want you to give to me. And they're not like really respecting or honoring the role of the parent in the child's life, or the need to have a straight line connection. Okay. We got, even when parents are together in the same household, you have different thoughts or ideas. Yes, you do. And how do you honor the different thoughts or ideas? How do you make sure to treat the other parent the way you would want to be treated if you disagree? And Maggie says, when we operate from a place of fear, it becomes more restrictive. And Christina says, it's about respecting each other and the different values we all hold. I think it's also about love instead of power. Sometimes I think it's like operating from a place of love and from a place of respect for your child and your child's relationship with people besides you. I mean, I was divorced, and that's one thing I will say that we did pretty well. I'm not saying that we were great when we were married, and I'm not saying everything about our relationship is exemplary, but both of us did respect that our child needed to have a positive relationship with the other parent, and that we had like a firm line of not trash talking the other. I mean, it was bad enough we couldn't give him a complete family unit. So if we were going to be separate, at least we had the responsibility not to undermine the relationship with the other parent. Yes, love, because we're all in this together, and just be respectful and have a foundation that's understood that both parents love their children. Yep, that respectful. All right, well, we can leave you there. And Joyce says, I find our relationship as parents is a lot more traditional than I expected. The lion's share of child rearing falls to me as mom. And that's really, there's a lot in that, Joyce. A lot of positive and a lot of negative, possibly, but navigating it with your eyes open is what's important. So we're going to finish up our Living the Protective Factors webinars by Friday. We have tomorrow, I'm going to be here. We're going to talk about tapping into life energy through laughter, sex, and beauty. And then on Friday, there's a Living the Protective Factors Parent Cafe. And next week, this is really, for all of August, we're going to be giving you a taste of Be Strong Families workshops. Not that we're breaking up the workshops, but we're covering the themes that we have in certain workshops. So one of our trainings is called Parent Engagement Through a Lens of Equity. And we'll be offering that soon online. And we also offer it in person. And these themes are going to be what we're going to be talking about next week. So if there's an overview of equity and parent engagement and family engagement in your program, and then there's creating political equity, and then creating social equity and creating economic equity. And Friday there's a cafe. Oh, good, Christina. Glad you signed up for all of them. Encourage everyone to sign up. We will see you soon. You're going to also have a chance over in August to meet a lot of our Be Strong Families trainers if you haven't, because I'm not going to be here as much. And we will have more of the people who are providing these trainings. So you'll get a sense of them. And thank you for being here. Did you launch the poll, Andrew? People are going to be leaving soon.
No, I can launch it now.
Okay, thank you, Christina. Thank you, Tiffany, Stephen, Tammy. Is this the last slide?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, we'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody. Shantae, totally welcome.